All right, welcome. Here we are, week 7, another Millionaire Maker contest up for grabs. What's the word, Jason?
Well, I'll tell you what, man. Those millionaire makers, they're enticing to say the least.
I know, we did not expect this. There was supposed to be one Millionaire Maker, and now this is the third week running. Last week, I totally thought that the entrants were going to hit somewhere around 50K. There's a total of 93,000. They hit 85,000 last week, and so they're running with it again. Right now, we're at about 25,000 entrants, which is quite a bit less than last week. So I suspect this might be the last week that they do this, but we'll see. How'd you do?
Well, not so great, and that's actually kind of the reasoning behind the opening for the article this week, and also the fantasy haiku. Now, the haiku is absent from the article, but I did hook you up with one this week. This week, it's all about playing your odds. Lottery tickets. More plays equals more chances. Be smart with your odds. Now, that last line is key and paramount importance of that whole statement there, and I didn't follow that piece of advice last week. I had one lineup that I felt pretty good about, so I decided why not just throw it out there and put it in the Millionaire Maker to see what happens. As a result, that lineup didn't happen to do great, and I lost the entry fee for the Millionaire Maker. Now, looking back, had I entered multiple lineups and all the lineups that I'd created for the week and entered into other contests, I would have actually profited a little over $1,000. So I didn't follow my own advice, and it was poor bankroll management on my behalf, and that's why I talk about it in the article, and that's why I'm talking about it right now. These things are kind of like a scratch-off. Like Sam said, there's 93,000 people in there, which means that obviously the odds are, you can't quite say it's 1 in 93,000, but essentially it's a scratch-off ticket. You're not necessarily going to win, even if with the best composed lineup. It's a lot of luck, and it's a lot of chance as well. So be smart with your entries, and don't just expect to throw one at it and hit a bullseye with that one lineup, because the odds are definitely stacked against you. Even with multiple entries, it's very difficult to get that top spot.
Yeah, we focused this week on GPPs and this podcast on GPP plays, but really you want to diversify. You want to if you're playing this for the long run, you want to play in 50-50s, head-to-heads, and spread out your bankroll and play responsibly with it. Well, interesting enough, I mean, with lottery tickets, like you said, actually your odds are the same. No matter how many lottery tickets you put in, each one has the same odds. But what you can do with multiple entries is you can vary up your lineups. One core strategy in GPP play is to come up with 3 to 4 players that you really like and you really believe in, and you have some good data and basis for believing in them, and then you build your lineup around them. And you give yourself multiple chances. If you put all your eggs in one basket, you could you could lose everything. So just diversify. Put a lot of plays out there, a lot of rosters. I was actually looking pretty good. I had Joik Bell, I had the Lions, I had Forte, I had Sanu in a lineup, and I had Cutler, and I had a couple guys like Sammy Watkins and Julio Jones, which was just amazing. I was able to work him in, and Atlanta just ate it, which is so rare for them at home. It was shocking. Did you see
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. That it's just one of those things, and then that's exactly what I said. You can go into it with the best, and I mean, like Sam just said, I mean that's a great composed lineup for a GPP. He's got studs, he's got high upside, low budget players. I mean that's how you want to compose a winning. That's the winning strategy to do it. But even then, if you spend a lot of money on a guy like Julio Jones and he doesn't show up and doesn't produce like you expect, that has just officially tanked your chances.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get into it. Why don't you go into your quarterback? For those that don't know, we do a Money in the Bank pick. This is a pick that we feel no matter what, you're going to get some points out of them at a good value, and then we do a coin flip, which is just what it says. It's a coin flip. It may or may not happen, but usually pretty good value, and you have a good shot. So why don't we start with your quarterbacks?
I'm going to go with Joe Flacco this week. There's obviously a lot of guys towards the top, and Flacco's actually at $7,700. He presents some decent value. Now, he's going up against the Falcons, who are 15th against opposing quarterbacks right now. However, last week he threw 5 touchdowns in 16 minutes and 3 seconds. Now, I don't think that that's going to happen again, but this is obviously a much more dynamic offense with Steve Smith Sr. in the picture. He's opened up a lot of opportunities that they didn't have last year without Anquan Bolden once they let him go to San Francisco. I don't really think that he's going to put up the similar production that he had last week. I mean, again, 5 touchdowns. It was a career day, so obviously it's not something he does regularly. But last week the Falcons gave up 381 yards to Cutler, and Cutler, has some decent weapons. Obviously, maybe a little better weapons than what Joe Flacco has with Baltimore. But I think that he can still have a very, very productive day.
Yeah, it's tough to fade any quarterback against Atlanta. There will be a lot of people on Flacco this week. I don't know if you're chasing him against Atlanta, because Atlanta just gives up passing yards to anyone. I mean, passing and rushing yards. So they were on the field so much last week, Ryan didn't even get a chance to play. So Flacco is definitely going to put up numbers. Atlanta has a lot of problems with speed. They're slow. Their linebackers are slow. They always have problems with Steve Smith, and you've got Torrey Smith with speed as well. So I don't think you can go wrong with Flacco. He's going to be money in the bank. They're also playing at home. My money in the bank, obviously you like Andrew Luck. You know he's going to do well at home, but I'm going with Aaron Rodgers. He's just been killing it. He's on a tear. 15 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's really coming into his own, and he's got a nice matchup this week. He's got some nice weapons that are playing well for him. The running game isn't all that there. They're not leaning on Lacy. So I look for him to continue his hot streak.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that one. That's actually my other pick from the article as well. Aaron Rodgers, ever since he had the relaxed conversation on the radio, which I'm sure we all heard about, I mean, he has been money in the bank. And the one game that he didn't produce maybe what we expected was against Minnesota, and that was largely due to how effective the defense was in causing turnovers and giving him a short field to work with. But he still put up multiple touchdowns in the game. It was just the yardage total that was somewhat unimpressive. I don't see any reason why he cannot do something against Carolina. It's a high over-under game. He's at home. And again, like you said, the running game's been fairly pedestrian. Eddie Lacy just hasn't looked great, and James Starks hasn't really been a breakout either. So they're going to rely on Rodgers as always, and he's going to have a big week.
Yeah, and Devontae Adams is coming into his own. He's stepped up. Boykin's out of the picture, and he's a bigger target. He's also looking really good in these GPP plays. If you go by Vegas odds this week, we're going to have a high-scoring week. I mean, this is one of the highest over-unders I've seen. Across the board, there's a ton of games with opportunities. So let's move into your coin flip at quarterback.
Probably not a guy that most people, at least preseason, would have thought ended up on a list like this, but it's Matt Stafford this week. Going up against New Orleans. They're 24th against opposing quarterbacks, so it's a good matchup, and he's relatively cheap at $7,000. I mean, when you consider where you would think that Stafford would be as a consensus top 5 quarterback or top 6 quarterback going into the season, but we've seen how effective or how ineffective he's been without Calvin Johnson due to that high ankle sprain. This is another week that we're likely to not have Calvin Johnson. They're saying he may be out till week 9 or 10, but it's like Sam just said, it's a high over-under game. There's going to be a lot of passing and a lot of scoring, and the New Orleans defense has just not looked good. Detroit's playing at home. It's going to be a friendly environment, and it's a very contrarian pick, and it is definitely a coin flip. He hasn't scored over 13.04 points since Megatron has not been in the lineup, or at least been 100% healthy in the lineup, but he could turn it around any time, and I think that the New Orleans Saints are a prime candidate for that to happen against.
Yeah, it is a high over-under at 49. They are going to have to, I think it's going to be a bit of a shootout. I mean, Detroit's got a really strong defense this year, passing and rushing, so it'll be interesting to see what Drew Brees does, but the Saints usually find a way to put up some points, and I think Detroit's going to have to throw as well to keep up with that. All right, well, my coin flip is Colin Kaepernick. He's not too much of a coin flip, but maybe for a GPP he might be. He's pretty consistent. In other formats, he'll score 20-plus points a week, and he's good on the ground. He's always carries that threat. Last week he had a great game, so some people might be on him. They have a really high over-under. They're going to have to keep up with Denver. Vernon Davis is back. For some reason, they couldn't get the ground game going last week. I think they will a little bit more this week. That might cut into him a little bit, but with his running, with his passing, and having to keep up with Denver, I like the matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a decent matchup with Denver, and like you said, a lot of scoring and a lot of opportunity. And while Kaepernick may not be the most prolific passer, he's also not a passer that's prone to a lot of mistakes, and a lot of that's the playing style and the offense of that San Francisco 49ers team. So, knowing that they may have to pass more often, I think that they'll mitigate some of that risk by giving him high percentage plays and allowing him to rack up a pretty decent total.
Yeah, and at 6,500, he opens up a lot of opportunity for you elsewhere, and that's really important in a GPP lineup.
Definitely.
All right, let's move on to your wide receiver. Last week, wide receivers were big with some really big points. I mean, Sanu, Steve Smith. I mean, you had a lot of guys that if you had in your lineup, you were placing. And this week, it's a bit of the same, but the difference is the salaries have come down so much. You don't have to spend on wide receiver this week. I mean, you can find a lot of good gets at under 6,000.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'll definitely highlight some of those and some of the other content we have this week. But while we're talking about money in the bank, I've got to go with the guy at the top of the list, and that's Jordy Nelson. We already talked about Aaron Rodgers. We already talked about the matchup and the passing game. Carolina's given up the 24th most points to opposing wide receivers right now, so you've got to like the matchup for Nelson. He is expensive. He's 8,200, but in weeks past, we've seen guys that have been in the 9,000 to 10,000 range and higher up, closer to 9,000. So that's really not a bad total for a guy who's leading the league in reception yards right now. So he's scoring 24.2 points per game. I think that if you can fit him in your lineup, I think that he could be a really effective guy to maybe work in an Aaron Rodgers and Jordy Nelson stack if you can.
Yeah, I mean Jordy Nelson, he's just been money, and he's getting so many targets. He's Rodgers' favorite target, and you can hold him down for a while. Chicago held him down for a while, but he's going to get his at the end. He's super quick.
And the other thing to not forget is that just last week, the Bengals went up against the Panthers without A.J. Green, and Mohamed Sanu was able to go for 120 and a touchdown. So with the full complement of weapons that Aaron Rodgers should have, Randall Cobb, Devontae Adams, who you mentioned, Jordy Nelson, it's going to be a big day.
Yeah, with his quickness, I mean, they get down inside the 10-yard line and do a slant, and no one's covering Jordy Nelson. They've done it a few times this year, and Rodgers keeps throwing to him. So I also think he's money in the bank. I'm going to go a little bit outside of the top receivers, and I'm going to go with the number one. It's Cecil Shorts. Now, this is the caveat is if he can stay healthy. He dropped out of a game and just killed me against San Diego. But prior to that, I mean, he's been in 3 games and 2 out of 3 over 100 yards. Last week he had 16 targets, and they're always going to be playing from behind. That's what you want to see. He's got a good value. He caught 10 for 103 last week, going up against Cleveland this week. There's no reason why Cecil Shorts can't keep up with any other wide receiver out there.
Yeah, and you know, maybe going into the season with Cleveland and their secondary, Joe Hayden-led secondary, you'd think that maybe that's not a real favorable matchup or might not look real bad, but that secondary has been beat somewhat consistently throughout the season so far. Even though Cleveland's looked good as a whole, they're beatable. So there's no reason to think, and to your point, you know, Shorts is a guy that can burn you, but this is a weekly game that we play, and at $5,400, he's absolutely worth a dice roll.
Yep. All right, who do you have at the flip position?
I'm going with Andre Holmes this week. He had a monster week last week. 4 catches, 121 yards, 2 touchdowns, and that was up against the Chargers. He's obviously the young quarterback, Derek Carr's favorite target. Over the last 2 games, previous 2 weeks, he's gotten 20 targets. So targets equals touches. We've talked about that before. It's only 4,800, and he's going up against the 32nd dead last defense, Arizona, against the pass. So I like his odds, and again, for the value at 4,800, I'll take a wide receiver 1.
Yeah, it's surprising that Arizona is just so terrible against the pass. I don't know what they're doing there. After that Denver game, I just lost all confidence in those coaches. I don't know if they're going to put Patrick Peterson on Holmes, but if I were them, I would. But anyway, he's a big frame, he's fast, and he's the number 1 on that team, and Carr is throwing to him and looking to him, and that's what you want. You want targets and looks. I think he'll be a heavier play this week based on last week's performance, so that's something you want to take into account with your GPP lineups. But, yeah, he's someone that's good. All right, Odell Beckham is my pick at the coin flip. Now, I think it's either Randall, Beckham, or Donald this week, and everyone knows that. It's just a matter of who's going to get it. Everyone's jumping on Randall. He's obviously been a target hog, but after Cruz went out last week, Beckham started to get some more looks, and he's vowed to step it up for his fallen brother. So I just feel it this week on Beckham. He's fast. He's going to get more and more snaps. He's dynamic, as we saw the first game, and I think he's going to get those targets. And Randall's going to draw more attention now, and I don't think Randall's the number 1. I've watched him play. He's too sloppy. He's inconsistent. He drops, and I think Manning's going to start looking for Beckham and potentially Donald a lot more.
Absolutely, and the other thing to consider as well is Victor Cruz plays on the outside as well as Odell Beckham Jr. Ruben Randle's more of a slot guy, so the guy to naturally kind of fill that void left by the injury to Victor Cruz is going to be Odell Beckham Jr.
Yeah, we'll see. It's just Manning. He's such a question mark. I mean, I really expected last week it was set up for him, and I know a lot of people had him in their lineups. I did as well against the Eagles, and it's just it's hard to call.
Yeah,
Anyway,
he doesn't handle pressure well. That's for certain. We've all learned that.
yeah. All right, running back. Oh, by the way, on that note, did you see the Philadelphia Eagles video they put out? The cartoon. It was a little stupid, but it was kind of funny.
No, I didn't.
Okay, they put out a cartoon on social media. Look it up for everyone out there. It was like Eli Manning is a little boy trotting out onto the field, and they had a bunch of Eagles with voiceovers, cartoons, and he was crying to himself. And it turned out to be true, but it was pretty funny. I'm surprised they didn't get a fine or had to take that down because it was pretty questionable for the official Philadelphia Eagles social media to put that out.
It's a tough town.
Yeah. All right, running back, Money in the Bank.
Going with another obvious one, DeMarco Murray, going up against the Giants, just talking about him. Horrible, 27th against the run. He was a little limited this week, but it looks like it was just an illness. He's back to a full participant in practice, so it looks like that's behind him. And last week was a bad matchup against Seattle, and he went for 115 and a touchdown, also caught 6 passes for 31 yards. He's basically unfazable at this point. It's going to take an injury or something to slow him down, and until that happens, until he gives us a reason to not trust him, I think you got to go with him.
Yeah, definitely. He's proved himself. I mean, he is the number one running back in the NFL right now. That line has just been demolishing people. Doug Free did get lost last game, and he's out, I think, 3 to 4 weeks. And he's a big part of that line. So we'll see if that has an effect. But they're at home, and they keep feeding him, and they're winning. Everyone always thought it was going to be Des Bryant that was going to carry them, and it's the running game. And with Randall, I mean, just getting arrested for shoplifting. Who knows why any NFL player has to shoplift? But they talked about getting Randall more looks, and he did get more carries last game. He had his highest output in yards, but I just don't see DeMarco Murray falling off. The biggest challenge is going to be working him into your lineup. He's super expensive. He's priced. But if you can, he's going to be worth it. My money in the bank is Marshawn Lynch. I had a lot of coverage on him last week, and I don't know what Seattle was doing, 10 touches for Marshawn. I mean, when they do that, they lose. And I think they're not going to make that mistake again, and it would be stupid to make that mistake. So I think they're going to feed him, and they're going to feed him a lot. And he's a little bit cheaper, 7,100. That's a big difference between DeMarco Murray, and he could put up similar numbers. So I like his value as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, Marshawn Lynch is the type of runner that he needs those touches to get going. It's like as he progresses, the more touches he gets, the more effective he gets. So effectively, by limiting his touches, you're also definitely limiting his upside because he just never seems to get fully in beast mode, if you will, and get going.
Yeah, he's a fourth quarter running back, and if they don't get him there, get him those touches, he's not going to perform. But it's mind blowing to me. I don't understand how a coach you can have him at home and not run him. It was just crazy. And what it's doing is it's opening up opportunities for Russell Wilson. So if they continue to do this, Russell Wilson is getting more rush yards. He's getting more TDs. But I don't think that's long term. I don't think that's sustainable. I think they need to go back to beast mode. I think they will this week. All right, who do you have for your coin flip and running back?
I'm going with Isaiah Crowell here. He's 4,000, but a lot of this has to do with the matchup. They're going up against Jacksonville. We all know how bad Jacksonville is, so that's a lot of it there. But the one concern, I guess the caveat's kind of one of the similar things you talked about with Murray. They just lost the center, Alex Mack, and he's a big part of that offensive line. The center is basically your quarterback of the offensive line, so it's going to be important to see how that line reacts. Now, again, it's a great matchup for him, and last week he went for 11 rushes for 77 yards and a touchdown. That was with a healthy Terrence West, who was just inactive for the game. So it appears that he's got that second running back slot behind Ben Tate locked up. The only concern is the couple of fumbles. If he can get the ball control down, he's going to be a good start, so long as that offensive line can stay strong for him.
Yeah, I ran with Crowell 2 weeks ago, and he laid a goose egg for me. Didn't get any carries. They just fed the ball to Ben Tate the whole time. So I don't know. It's definitely a coin flip. He has had some fumble issues, but he's far more dynamic, in my opinion, than Terrence West, and he's solidified himself in that number 2 role, and that's what the beat writers are saying out of Cleveland as well. So I would consider him a lock at the number 2 position for the next game, and Jacksonville is terrible against the run. My coin flip is Justin Forsett. I know he's a starter, but he got out carried by Bernard Pierce last week, and you really don't know what's going to happen week to week. I do think he's up for a good game. Once again, Atlanta can't handle speed. You saw what Forte did to them. You saw what every running back does to them. They get destroyed. And Forsett's going to be no different. I think he's the one that breaks it. I think that the Baltimore is going to run a lot this game and control that as well and keep Matt Ryan off the field. So coin flip, Justin Forsett, I think he's a good bet.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with that one. If you're going with the Baltimore back, it increasingly looks like he's the one you want to roll with. It. You know, it may not be advisable, but again, it can pay off. So again, I agree.
Yeah, the only concern is he had 14 touches, I believe, and I really look for running backs to get 20-plus touches if I can in my GPPs, but it all depends on the salaries and what you can work in. All right, tight end. Money in the bank.
This is probably, I would say, one of my favorite picks of the week, and it's Jordan Cameron. Again, the Jacksonville matchup. Again, horrible defense. Thing here, though, he's healthy now. Just last week, 3 catches, 102 yards, and a touchdown, and you got to love the matchup. But the thing that I like best here is that if you were to go with Cameron, I think that he could be really effective in a stack with Brian Hoyer at 5,600. Now, I'm not going to go a lot into Hoyer. Maybe that'll be something later on that I'll talk about in one of the other articles this week. But again, Cameron's a great play. He's not terribly expensive. The one concern that I have in this game is just going to be how much may they spread the ball. I mean, obviously with a bad defense, there's a better likelihood that they try and get the ball out to Hawkins or Benjamin, Miles Austin perhaps. So maybe he doesn't get as many targets, but I think he can produce in this one.
Yeah, I had Cameron last week. I liked him for a breakout, and I wish he would get more targets. I feel like he's a clear-cut number 1 wide receiver on that team, and I just think he should get more targets. I have him in some season long as well. But if he's healthy, if you remember him in his prime when he had someone throwing to him consistently, he was putting up nice numbers, and there's no reason he shouldn't do this week as well. Jacksonville's terrible against tight ends, terrible. And Hoyer's been showing up. I mean, he's been accurate. He's been a good thrower, so he is a potential stack in this GPP. Totally agree. All right, my money in the bank is Julius Thomas. If you look at the salary, Demarius at 8,000, Julius at what is he at 6,900.
Right.
I mean, he's a wide receiver. Okay, he every week he's getting touchdowns. They get in the red zone, he's getting touchdowns, and their offense is operating well. San Francisco is decimated at the linebacker position. He's gonna get it. If you can work him into your lineup, you could even roll with him in a flex position and get Larry Donnell or another really cheap tight end in there, and he's worth it. I like the value this week at his salary.
Yeah, I totally agree. He's my other pick this week in the article, and look, Peyton's chasing that 508 touchdowns. He needs 3. They're gonna happen this week, so. Look for one of those to be headed Julius's way.
Big week this week at home. I mean, I feel like they almost wanted to save it, just to celebrate at home. So Manning's going to be in a ton of lineups again. It's just a matter of who you're going to pair him with, and you're going to see Manning and Julius Thomas in some winning lineups this week for sure. All right, your coin flip at tight end.
I'm going to go with Jared Cook. Now, not the greatest of matchups. I talked about this a little bit last week with the other guy who had a similar matchup. That was Witten. They're going up against Seattle. So Seattle's not been great against tight ends. They actually are 29th against opposing tight ends, and I think that continues to be the case because they've lost Bobby Wagner, at least for this week. Over the last 3 weeks, Jared Cook has had 30 targets, so it's 10 targets a game. He's a big part of that offense, and obviously one of Austin Davis' favorite targets. Given how proficient that secondary is in Seattle and that you don't really have a really amazing breakout wide receiver, I mean, Brian Quick's been impressive. Tavon Austin's had his moments, but these aren't guys that are going to be able to create separation and find a lot of space. So I think that maybe Cooks will relied on a bit more in the passing game in this game and could lead to a decent, I'm not going to say a stellar game for him, but again, this is a PPR game that we play, and every catch that he makes is also scoring you a point.
Yeah, this could be the week he gets his touchdown. Seattle is bad against the tight end, and Davis is going to have to get it out quick. I mean, Seattle can still rush, and they're going to get some pressure on Davis, and I think that Cook's a good play as well. My flip, which I've been rolling with him for a few weeks, and he's been letting me down, Larry Donnell. This has to be the week he comes through. He's super cheap again. He opens up some cap room for you. He's cruises down. It's going to be one of those guys like we spoke about. If they get into the red zone and Manning has a bounce back week, which I expect him to have somewhat, they're going to have to throw to keep up with Dallas, and Donald could get back to those touchdown ways of his.
Yeah, Dallas is 31st against opposing tight ends, so he's and like you said, depleted weapons. He's going to be part of the offensive game plan for sure.
Yeah, he should be. All right, defense, money in the bank, if there's such a thing. I don't think there is.
Yeah, they're all just about coin flips anymore, I feel like. But here's one that I feel confident they're at least going to have a higher floor than most, and that's the Seahawks again. They're going up against Seattle, and they're going to be really irritated by losing at home last week. So I think a motivated, chip on their shoulder team shows up to play. And the one thing, and I talked about this a little bit on Facebook, a shutdown defense isn't going to score you a ton of points. Obviously, what you want is a high-scoring defense, someone that's going to turn over the ball and somebody that could potentially get you touchdowns. Seahawks aren't necessarily great for that, but the potential is definitely there, especially with the rookie quarterback in this matchup. So at 3,200, I really like them. I think that they're a strong play. A lot of people will probably be on them this week, but again, they're not going to not score you points. You're definitely going to come out with something, unlike maybe the Chargers, who we talked about last week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that a lot of people are going to be on them after the way they perform. They're on the road in St. Louis, and it could be a nice sneaky play. I mean, they haven't been performing well this year, and they've got to step it up at one point, and a rookie quarterback's a good way to do it. Davis has shown some poise, but last week, second half, he crumbled a bit. First half, he was great. I mean, he was tearing him up over 200 yards. So we'll see. It'll be interesting. My money in the bank are the Bills. Look, once again, you look for matchups, rookie quarterback. Bills are super strong against the run. So if they can't run, they're going to be relying on Teddy. He's a rookie quarterback. Other than burning the Falcons, which everyone does, he hasn't done much, and he didn't look good. So I think that the Bills could easily get some turnovers and get some touchdowns at home. I like the play.
Yeah, I totally agree on that one. My additional pick as well. And, right now I think if you're starting anybody against a rookie quarterback, I think it's got to be Teddy. He's been the one who has at least been the least certain out of them so far.
Yeah, and, I mean, you're looking for those interceptions. You're looking for those sacks. He's going to get a bit nervous. Buffalo's a hostile place to play. They didn't do well against Brady last week, but I think they bounced back and put up a good showing and get some TDs. All right, your coin flip of defense.
Going with the Cowboys. Cowboys at home. Look, it's a divisional matchup. No Victor Cruz. We've already talked about that. We saw what Eli was unable to do last week, I guess, more so than able to do. So I like the matchup. And with one less wide receiver to worry about, that frees them up a little bit to maybe create some pass rush. And if they can get some rush on Eli, they can make some things happen. So $3,000 for him this week. I like the matchup. I like him at home, and I feel pretty good about this one. Even not so much as a coin flip. I think this one's not necessarily quite money in the bank, but pretty good pick.
All right. Dallas has been surprising on both ends of the ball. Their linebacker core, I don't know how they're doing it. I mean, McClain, and I don't know if you saw that interception a couple weeks ago, but it was miraculous. He should have had a touchdown on it. But yeah, they're doing well. They're at home. They could turn them over. You get some pressure on Eli, and there you go. Couple like floppy ducks up there, and someone's running it back for a touchdown. So it's a possibility. The Browns are my pick at a coin flip. It's all about matchups, and I mean Jacksonville does put up some points. So they're always throwing garbage time, and they usually get a couple touchdowns in there. But once again, you're going after touchdowns and turnovers, and Bortles has been prone to turnovers, and you know what's going to happen. It's just a matter of whether they can capitalize.
Yeah,
all
I
right.
agree with that one totally. The one caveat that I would throw out there for that one is just that, and this goes with anything, and just like we kind of talked about initially, these are coin flips, and when it comes to defenses, don't rely so heavily on one defense. a defense could potentially score you 0 points, it could score you 10 points, or it could score you 20 points. And a lot of times to win, you're needing that 20-point lineup. So, see what you can find out there and see what you can do to get creative with your lineup, but don't put all your eggs in one basket like we talked about to begin with.
Yeah, defense is one of those positions that is a true coin flip no matter who you put out there. So I totally agree. When you come up with your 3 to 4 positions, you might want to consider defense not being one of those that are constant and having a few that you believe in and diversifying those lineups. All right, Jason, well, thank you. You can find Jason at Fantasy Rambler. You can find us both at Fantasy Football Money League. Once again, good luck. Hope you become that millionaire this weekend.
Yeah, we'll see you at the top of the leaderboard.
All right. Take care.